Working on his Advanced Communicator Gold, and today's speech is the 4th speech in his journey of 10. John is an operations manager at Siemens across the street. He's the founder and lead facilitator for the Stretched Men Group, a mastermind group for men, and he's the author of Rooftop Reflections, which released on December 5th and is available on rooftopreflections.com and is currently sitting on my dresser, and I haven't read it yet. That's not written here, but it is. Today, John will be presenting his speech, A Broken Heart. The speech is from project number 4 from the Storytelling Advanced Communication series. The duration is 6 to 8 minutes. For his speech, John will be telling an original story designed to evoke emotion among listeners. The objectives of John's speech are to understand the techniques available to arouse emotion and to become skilled in arousing emotions while telling a story. Please welcome our speaker, John Volpe.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. A broken heart. Christy Brinkley said, "I'd rather have a broken arm than a broken heart." And I'm here to say I think I agree with that. I've actually had both. I broke my arm when I was in 1st grade. I fell out of an apple tree. And I think it did hurt. That was a long time ago. The thing I remember the most is just the uncomfortable itchiness under my cast. But a broken heart is something I've probably felt more frequently and certainly more recently. And I can tell you that really hurts. Thursday, July 21st, 2016. I was in Guatemala, in Xenico, Santo Domingo, Xenico in Guatemala. And I had been there for almost 2 weeks. And when I arrived in Xenico, I had this prayer. I said, "God, let my heart break for the things that break your heart." Boy, I did not know what I was asking for when I prayed that prayer. So where do I start? Probably start in the middle of the day. So our family was down in Guatemala, and we decided that we were going to eat lunch and then head back to Maria's house. This is Maria's house. And we were working on building Maria's house. And my wife and I were putting the last couple pieces up on the front of her house. And then we had to go inside and put little pieces to fill in the gaps between the wood, because the wood we were using for Maria's house was unfinished on one side. It had bark on it, as you can see. And on the other side, it was flat. But there was enough space between the wood that we really needed to close that up. So we were putting spacers in there. And it kind of looks like a log cabin, but this was suitable for Maria. Maria didn't have a house before, and now she gets to have a house. My goal of building 100 houses in Guatemala is coming along. I'm making plans for the next house or next couple of houses. And I hope that they will look better than this in the long run. But I know that this was a step in the right direction. At any rate, as we were finishing up in the afternoon, German, who was one of the locals in Xenico, who we get to work with all the time, grabbed Dave Scrow, the missionary who we had been working with, and said, "Let's go. I want to show you another place where we need to build a house." Well, I immediately took off my tool belt and I followed him because I wanted to be part of this conversation. So we walked up the road and we walked into this property, and I looked into the property and I saw that there was corn in neat rows, and then back in another corner there was a bunch of weeds, and then right where we were standing I looked up and I noticed that there was somewhat of a structure going up. There were 6 or 7 trees or branches that were positioned vertically, and then there were a couple of pieces of wood on top of them to hold a roof. Well, this was the beginning of a house that a widow was building for herself and her kids and her mother. And we asked a few questions, and I immediately ran back to Maria's house. And I went back and I said, Leanne, that's my wife, Hannah and Isaac, let's go. I want to show you something. So I brought them back to see this house, and this is Carmen. Carmen was the lady who was planning to live there. She had been living somewhere else, but she was told she needed to move on. So somehow she came across this piece of property, and she rents the property for roughly $36 a month. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but here's the dilemma. How does she make her money? She currently makes her money by making tablecloths and napkins and serviettes, table runners and things like that. And typically it'll take 6 days to make one of these tablecloths that she sells for about $6. So you can do the math and you can see that things aren't really adding up. So she clearly needs help. As we were standing there, we realized that we had a lot of extra lumber at Maria's house. And we decided that we were going to talk to Maria and bring that lumber back the next day to work on Carmen's house. Now, before we left Carmen's property, German and Dave gathered us all around, and we had Carmen in the middle, and Carmen kneeled down, and then we all put our hands around her, or on her, and German started praying. And he started praying in Spanish first, and I understood that a little bit. And then he started praying in Quechua, which is the local Mayan language there. I didn't understand any of that. And then he prayed in English. And you could hear him crying as he was praying. You could hear the tears coming out of his eyes, and you could hear it coming through the words that he was sharing as he prayed. And then he finished his prayer, and I opened my eyes, and I noticed that Dave Scrow, the missionary who we were working with, was weeping. It's like, wow, this is pretty tough. I was holding it together at that point, but then we walked back to Maria's house, and I sat Maria down with the rest of us around, and I told Maria about our plans. And as I began to share, I started to weep. I started to cry. And I said, Maria, our family has been coming to Guatemala for the past several years, in part to build houses for people like you. We care about you. We want to keep doing that. And part of it is because we want to show you God's love in a practical way. My heart was breaking. And we said, Maria, if you wouldn't mind, we'd like to use the extra lumber that we got for your house and bring it and use it for Carmen's. And she said, absolutely. She said it in Spanish, so I didn't really understand her, but that's what she said. So the next day, we got to bring the lumber over and work on Carmen's house. Now, Carmen is not unlike a lot of people in the world. Here in the United States, we are blessed. We are so fortunate. We have a roof over our head, we have walls, we have a real floor, we have running water, electricity, plumbing, all that stuff. A good portion of the people in the world live just like Carmen, and that does break my heart. But going on a trip like that also fills your heart because you know that you can make a difference. Before I close, I wanted to share just a little bit. As Matt mentioned, I have my book, Rooftop Reflections. I'd love for you to get a copy of this and to hear more stories like the one I just shared with you. You can get a copy by going either to Amazon or going to rooftopreflections.com. But I have another call to action for you as well. If you'd like to make houses like this happen and are a little unsure if you want to go, there's a give button on that site if you'd like to give to make more houses happen. But there's also a button on there to go. And if you'd like to go with me on an upcoming trip, click on that go button, and I'd love to connect with you and share more information. I'd like to show you how you can help make broken hearts whole again. Mr. Toastmaster?
Thanks, sir. John, great speech you Thank you.